Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me to address this forum. The topic that has been given to me is the threats posed by the international network of the Tamil Tigers. Let me begin by saying that the scenario that we are seeing in Sri Lanka would have never been imagined, or it is inconceivable to have even thought of it 2.5 years ago. It has been the tremendous work and strategic thinking put forward by Gotabaya Rajapaksa, assisted by the service commanders and the soldiers on the ground, that has transformed this situation from a situation in which a terrorist group controlled significant swathes of land to a situation in which today the LTTE is confined to the no-fire zone. As much as there has been success on the ground, it is in Sri Lanka, it is also important that we concentrate on the LTTE's international capabilities and international network overseas. Let me start by looking at the LTTE's international network, and I'm going to do this in a manner so that I can then address as measures as to how to counter these threats. The LTTE's international network can broadly be categorized into 3 areas. Firstly, there are very aggressive and active fundraising mechanisms. Secondly, the weapons procurement networks and the logistics support facilities that they have. And thirdly, the broadcast facilities, the propaganda machinery that the LTTE runs. Over and above this, the LTTE also has coordination mechanisms to mobilize the Tamil diaspora overseas, as well as political lobbying and public relations. But I'll take the first 3 items and then move on to the next 2. The reason is that in developing a strategy to counter the LTTE's capability, we need to bring in the services and expertise of different agencies in Sri Lanka. Firstly, their fundraising capability, the LTTE's fundraising capability. Here, as I see it, with the destruction of the LTTE, the individual collections that the LTTE has been able to acquire, as well as the operations of the front organizations, such as the Tamil Rehabilitation Organization, the TRO, the White Pigeon Organization, Siva Yogam Trust, and the rest of it, will see a decline, because the story that most of these front organizations have been selling thus far has been that they are assisting the population in the LTTE controlled areas. And now you have a chance to actually audit the so-called projects that these front organizations have said that they were undertaking. So their story won't hold water any longer, and they won't be able to sell this internationally to say that they are working in the LTTE controlled areas and that they are involved in humanitarian work. So as I see it, the fundraising avenues in terms of individual collections and the front organizations will see a decline. But we have to understand that the LTTE is not dependent on these sources of revenue. The LTTE has other avenues which they have developed, and we need to address those. The LTTE has a very, very active calling card network. That is, they buy bulk airtime from European capitals, European cities, and then retail it on calling cards through telecom operators, what are called telcos, telecom companies. And this is big revenue generation mechanism for the LTTE, and this will continue to operate. The management of Hindu temples has also been a very lucrative business for the LTTE. The LTTE takes control of the management, gets involved in the trusteeship of Hindu temples, and collections are made through the till, and these collections do not have a paper trail, and therefore a very easy way of laundering money. The LTT is also involved actively in the distribution of Tamil DVDs in Europe and North America, and this is also a lucrative business which no doubt will be continued. The LTT has also invested significant funds into what are called ethnic spice shops, especially in the UK and Canada, and the return on investment in these projects would also continue to flow into the LTT coffers. Now, these funds and the management of assets is also a key important area, and this is something that the Sri Lankan intelligence services have not been very strong on, and there's very little information as to how the LTTE maintains its assets, its liquid assets as well as its real estate assets. So we need to put a lot of concentration and focus in the future to look at how the LTTE will maintain and secure its asset base overseas. From the information that I have been able to access, Tamalinti, who was killed very recently, was the head of finance, and he, in coordination with a person called Chandru, also known as Sana, operating out of the Netherlands, managed a lot of the secret bank accounts that the LTT had, especially in some of the tax havens overseas. So a significant focus of our intelligence work has to be put towards identifying the fund flow mechanisms of the LTTE in the future. The next area of concern and that needs addressing is the LTT's procurement and logistics networks. Now, without having territory in Sri Lanka, the LTT will decline. The LTT's purchasing requirements will decline at the initial stages. It is unclear as to how the LTT would emerge after the conflict, whether there would be splinter groups that operate or whether it's completely destroyed. But these expertise that they have built up over the years in terms of their procurement cells, they have 3 known cells that operate under, initially operated under KP, but then tended to deviate to operate independently. They have a China Southeast Asia cell which has been very active in especially procuring artillery weapons from China as well as some of the Southeast Asian countries. Then they have a Eastern European cell which has a presence in Ukraine. Of recent past, they have not been too active, but they were one of the key suppliers in the early period. And of course, they have also a presence in the Horn of Africa, operating out of Eritrea. Now, these cells, the procurement cells, may tend to go into low key and initially not be procuring very much. But however, the LTT also has its logistics capabilities. At the moment, from the information I have, the LTTE has a fleet of, I believe, 4 merchant vessels remaining. These operate out of Philippines under a name, operated or headed by a person by the name of Raja Anand, in close collaboration with a group operating out of the UK, headed by a person by the name of Nehruji.